Feel Good Breakfast Show.
Yes, Mzansi, welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. It's Monday and we are getting straight into the action. Now, we're talking about power. We had this conversation earlier, but let's dive a little bit deeper, right? The power crisis in South Africa continues. And Eskom is announcing last Thursday that the country could face possible stage 8 load shedding this winter as it keeps battling to keep the lights on. Now, there's also been talk of a total collapse of the grid, although the power utility has moved to all fears in that regard. But we have questions and we need answers. So here to speak more about the state of the grid, we have energy expert Matthew Cruz in the building. Matt, how you doing, bro?
Great, I'm good, thanks you.
Good, I think we could be better, but let's see how this conversation goes.
You must have moments. In these moments, being an energy expert, someone who has been working this line for a while now, how scared should we be? Maybe let's start with what stage 8 actually looks like. On a practical level, how will that translate to our lived experience as a South African? What does stage 8 look like?
Great, so stage 8 is similar to stage 6 or stage 4, and it's an escalation above stage 6, but it'll be the first time that we've ever had in South Africa. So on a practical level, it means that you won't have power for up to 14 hours per day. It varies between exactly which municipality you're in, between 12 and 14 hours, but 14 hours is the average that you won't have power for.
And we've just come out of, I was looking at my app, it was like 11 and a bit hours that we've been sort of dealing with in the last few weeks. So maybe something we're used to, but again, it's just getting worse, it seems. And I think this is possibly the reason why so many people are now talking about, whoa, like this number can't just be going higher and higher. Potentially there's got to come a breaking point, and we're hearing this talk of collapse. Why is this suddenly becoming even more prevalent when it comes to conversation? Is this a real scare? Is this something that we should be aware of? What's your thoughts on this, man?
Great, so actually there's a limited risk of an actual collapse. And when we talk about a collapse, we talk about a total blackout where all the power stations need to trip and be disconnected from the grid.
Okay.
That'll take about 3 weeks for the power to come back if that takes place, but this is not a highly likely scenario in my opinion. 20% chance.
Okay, can I breathe a little bit? Yeah, a little bit. Okay.
The reason being is that as we have load shedding stages escalate, that's actually reducing the risk of a total blackout. So that's why we increase the levels of load shedding.
Okay. It's the South African way, to unintentionally reduce our emissions and sort out the problem without even realizing we're doing it. That's how we roll. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
So much has been said about, and I know this is very complex, it can't just rest on cable theft, on damage to substations. When we look at this transition, where is that focal point on? Is it protecting the infrastructure that's there? Is it the transition? Just as a roadmap in your space, where is the focus now? Should we be really looking at protecting and enhancing what Eskom already has, or is it all about that kind of the microgrids, the grids around the grid? Where do you see this battle line?
So I see it more towards the latter than the former. So looking at industries and municipalities taking care of their own energy needs, and homeowners as well taking care of their own energy needs, mostly with solar. Generators used to be the backup that you would go to, but now with a power out for 6 to 8 hours per day, the diesel generator is just too expensive. So solar is the primary choice that people are going with. And unfortunately, the way that things are looking, it looks like load shedding is going to double over the next 5 years.
Wow.
Because of the way things are being done in Eskom, everything's very slow. The government's response, very reactive, very slow. 10 years ago, when we should have been doing the things to make sure we didn't have this energy crisis, we were making other decisions.
But I think that the solutions, as a result, are also coming faster. We've seen about 30 different summits happening within that green energy space, and I think more traction this year in the last 3 months than we've seen in the last 10 years. So maybe there is an opportunity in that space. Let us know if you're seeing solutions we might not be in your community. How do we tackle stage 8 and beyond? How does the energy crisis affect you? We'd love to hear from you. We'll continue this discussion right now.
It's my Feel Good Breakfast Show.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for rejoining a vitally important discussion around the current state of load shedding and the power grid in itself. Obviously, the South African perspective needs discussion right now. And Matthew Cruz, who is an energy expert, has been letting us pick his brain. I'm sure you're like the most important guy in the room now, which is an amazing thing. I'm going to jump right in here because so much has been spoken about the transition. As much as the long-term future goals, sustainability, that's great, but we've got to survive winter. And there's going to be a lot of gas. There's going to be paraffin heaters. There's going to be cooking on this sort of, in this space. How do we use those safely? Do we have good governance for the now in what we should be, how we should be approaching that? Because this winter, there is going to be a lot of burning going on.
Yeah, that's very good. And so one of the things to note that's very important when you're burning paraffin or any kind of flame in your house to heat your house is to have some good ventilation. So have your window open a little bit to make sure that you have enough oxygen in the room for yourself to have, the air you need to breathe.
Yeah.
So also very important when you're going to heat your house during the night. The flame that's on can really use up all the oxygen in the room. So you need to have your window open a little bit, even though it's going to make you a little bit colder. If you're going to be using any kind of fire to heat yourself up, you need ventilation in order to breathe while you're
We've had
sleeping.
horror stories in the depths of winter.
Yeah, and
because of
that's
that
my
reason,
concern right now. And maybe being the expert that you are, possibly I could use your time right now more effectively and maybe help Mzansi. What are our options? And I think realistically, when you look at the majority of the households in South Africa, they don't have the option of solar. They don't have the option of generators. You've got to deal. But you're still going to make food and there's still other things we need, right? So what are your potential solutions or other alternatives when it comes to the general household in South Africa? What can we do when load shedding hits? What would you advise?
Great. So I myself, I went to Dis-Chem and I went and bought a whole bunch of warm clothing for myself and my wife.
Okay.
Because we don't have the option of putting rental on our property, solar on our property because of rental. So there's heating that doesn't involve cooking or burning anything or using electricity. We also got ourselves a small little gas heater that's very affordable. Can make yourself some tea, make a small meal at night, and check your load shedding schedule as well to see when you do have power, and then try and coordinate when you're making your food around that. That's recommended from my side.
Logistics.
Valuable stuff.
Yeah, I think it's just how you run that little system. And things are getting better, but it feels like it's always under this impending doom. 3,000 megawatts less this winter. That's not what you want to hear going into the leanest of times. The Minister of Electricity has come in. I've had the opportunity to host a couple of panels as he's been plying his trade. I'm struggling to understand fully what the role is. It feels PR. It feels like he has to change the conversation to a degree. Should he be doing more? Should his department be doing more? What is the role of the Ministry of Electricity right now, do you think?
So I'm very glad that the Minister of Electricity came into the position that he's in, mostly because it changes the conversation that we were having around energy. Previously, there was kind of like, Pravin and Grady, and there was a bit of a loggerheads, nothing really happening, no real progress happening. But now the whole conversation is shifting, and we're getting a lot more transparency in the sector because of the new electricity minister. So I'm actually glad that he's in his position. I'm glad with what he's doing, bringing a lot of vision and a lot of transparency to Eskom, and also giving us some long-term projections for the first time, like we're seeing here now, where Eskom is saying themselves, we might have stage 8 taking place over winter, potentially even stage 10 from our analysis, but we hope it doesn't go there.
Yeah.
And he's working. He's been on stages, taking those questions, taking it on the chin. So from that perspective, he's out there and he is changing.
Quite a big role to just jump into and deal with. Look, we've got so many people talking about this as well. I've obviously listened to this conversation. We've got a voice note right now from Lerato, which I'd love to play and maybe possibly weigh in on this, but let's see what she has to say.
So the Minister of Electricity, Kgosi Entu, tweeted a picture of himself and the Zulu King this weekend where he spoke about a collaboration. So, but we now ask ourselves, what is this man's priority? Because there's always just new ministers, new load shedding, new stages of load shedding, new coins, but no new solutions. What is actually going on?
The voice of the people.
I mean, you're not alone, Lorato. Everyone is asking these questions. And for you, on a slightly deeper level, you've got to consider these things because this is a big problem, but it's also people that are perpetrating a lot of the negative elements. How do you put it in perspective yourself to still work in the space, to be proactive, to have a positive mindset? How have you found your way navigating through the space when you get these kind of headlines, when we're fighting against this level of despondency and hopelessness? How do we approach that? I know you're not a politician or a psychologist, but you're having to do this every day.
I actually do like talking about the political aspects of things because it's almost intertwined with the politics of our past, how we got here. And I actually see a bright future for South Africa. And this is a transitionary phase that we're going through, not just in terms of decarbonization of our energy sector, but also in terms of what's next for South Africa. Because it's becoming apparent that our current situation isn't really working for us. So this is, in my mind, an accelerator where everyone gets to see this lack of service delivery. And everyone then starts making different decisions about what to do.
Well, it forces us all to become stakeholders. And I think that the notion of ownership is going to be a big one. And this is, from what I've seen, when power was released to the people, which it has been, that was an opportunity for us to take ownership of that. We joke about, you know, if you own that cable, ain't nobody gonna steal it. And this is the bottom line. If it's our infrastructure, we own it, we protect it, we get the most out of it. So think about it from that perspective. Buddy, thank you so much for opening our eyes.
Yeah.
He said a brighter future. He used those exact words. And we're gonna hold on to that.